In the restaurant's entry stood Marcus Johnson, transformed. He wore the immaculate dress uniform of an army colonel, green beret perfectly positioned, the silver eagle insignia of his rank gleaming on his shoulders. Rows of combat ribbons and decorations adorned his chest, telling a silent story of valor and service that even civilians could recognize as extraordinary. Two younger officers flanked him, their posture rigidly respectful. The restaurant fell into stunned silence as Collins froze mid-stride, color draining from his face. "Mr. Collins," Marcus stated, his voice carrying the natural command presence that had led soldiers through combat. "Colonel Marcus Johnson, United States Army Special Forces. I believe we've met." Collins's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Restaurant patrons watched the scene unfold, several recognizing Marcus from yesterday's incident. "I'm here to ensure the arrangements for our Pentagon delegation are satisfactory," Marcus continued, as if they were meeting for the first time. "General Williams and the congressional representatives will arrive shortly." Marcus stepped forward, extending his hand professionally. The action forced Collins to either shake it or publicly slight a decorated military officer in front of his entire restaurant. Mechanically, Collins took the offered hand. "Colonel Johnson," he managed weakly. There seems to have been a misunderstanding yesterday." "Indeed," Marcus replied evenly. "I trust today will proceed more smoothly." The former Marine security guard from yesterday stood nearby, now at a respectful attention. Collins glanced between them, realization dawning of just how severely he had miscalculated. "Of course, Colonel. We're honored to host you and your guests." Marcus nodded, revealing nothing in his expression. The Pentagon contingent includes General Williams, two congressmen from the Armed Services Committee, and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. "I'm sure you understand the importance of this meeting to national security matters." Each name landed like a hammer blow as Collins comprehended the magnitude of the people he would now need to face, having humiliated their host. Within the hour, Elliott's private dining room held some of the most powerful military and civilian defense officials in the nation. General Williams, a four-star general with a legendary reputation, sat at Marcus's right, while congressmen and high-ranking officers filled the remaining seats. Collins supervised service personally, his earlier arrogance replaced by anxious deference. When he approached with wine selections, Marcus acknowledged him with professional courtesy, neither vengeful nor overly familiar. Midway through the meal, the restaurant's owner, Edward Elliott himself, arrived, having been informed of the previous day's incident. He requested a private word with Marcus, stepping away from the table. "Colonel Johnson," Elliott began, genuine regret in his voice. "I want to personally apologize for your experience yesterday. It does not reflect our values or standards." Marcus studied the older man. "Mr. Elliott, I've commanded men and women from every background, judged them only by their character and actions. I expect no less from civilian establishments." "You're absolutely right," Elliott acknowledged. "I've already spoken with Mr. Collins. He's been removed from his management position, effective immediately." In the dining room, they could see Collins being escorted toward the exit, face flushed with humiliation. "That wasn't my intention," Marcus said quietly. "Perhaps not," Elliott replied, "but it was the right action regardless. The measure of an establishment isn't how it treats people of status, but how it treats everyone who walks through its doors." Marcus nodded, the simple wisdom echoing values he'd lived by through decades of service. "I couldn't agree more." 3 months later, Marcus returned to Elliott's, this time in civilian clothes, the same button-down shirt and dark jeans he'd worn before. The new manager, a woman who had been a server during his previous visits, greeted him warmly. "Colonel Johnson, your table is ready." The restaurant had changed. Staff now included veterans from a local employment program. At a nearby table, a black family was being served with the same attentiveness as the business executives beside them. As Marcus took his seat, he noticed Richard Collins, now working as a server rather than manager. Collins approached his table, visibly nervous. "Colonel Johnson," he said quietly, "I wanted to thank you. Losing my position was difficult, but necessary. I'm learning." Marcus nodded. "We all have opportunities to grow, Mr. Collins." The question is whether we recognize them when they appear. Some battles aren't fought with weapons, but with dignity, integrity, and the courage to stand firm when facing injustice. Has someone ever misjudged you? Share your story below and subscribe for more powerful moments of justice and redemption. What happens when you judge someone based solely on appearance? A prestigious restaurant became the stage for an unforgettable lesson when a manager humiliated the wrong customer. The confrontation that followed would change everything and everyone involved. The chandelier light cast golden reflections across Elliot's, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, and waitstaff moving with choreographed precision created an atmosphere of refined luxury. Among the well-dressed patrons sat Marcus Johnson, a broad-shouldered black man in his early 40s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and dark jeans. Clean and pressed, but noticeably more casual than surrounding suits and cocktail dresses. Marcus sat alone at his corner table, quietly reviewing the menu. His movements were deliberate and controlled, his posture naturally commanding even in repose. Occasionally, he would check his watch, waiting for someone perhaps. From across the dining room, Richard Collins, the restaurant manager, watched with narrowing eyes. Tall and slender, with immaculately styled hair and a custom-tailored suit, Collins moved between tables with practiced charm, greeting regular patrons by name and ensuring their satisfaction with elaborate courtesy. When his gaze fell on Marcus, however, his smile tightened. He whispered something to a waiter, who glanced at Marcus and nodded reluctantly. For 20 minutes, servers glided past Marcus's table without stopping, despite his raised hand requesting service. Finally, Collins approached, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Good evening," he said, his tone cooler than the one he'd used with other guests. "I don't believe I've seen you here before." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "First time. I have a reservation under Johnson." Collins scanned his tablet with exaggerated thoroughness. "Johnson, right? I see we've seated you already. Someone will be with you eventually." The dismissive tone wasn't subtle. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but his expression remained composed. Marcus had just taken a sip of water when Collins returned, flanked by two servers who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "Mr. Johnson," Collins began, voice pitched to carry just far enough for nearby tables to hear. "I'm afraid there seems to be a misunderstanding." Marcus set down his glass. "What misunderstanding would that be?" "Elliot's has certain standards," Collins continued, gesturing vaguely at Marcus's attire. "Our dress code requires formal attire, jacket and tie at minimum. It appears you've been seated in error." Marcus glanced around the room. 2 tables away, a younger white man in dark jeans and an open-collared shirt laughed with companions. Marcus turned back to Collins, his voice measured. "That gentleman seems comfortable enough." Collins barely spared a glance. "He's a regular. Mr. Peterson is well known to us." "I see," Marcus replied. "So the dress code is selectively enforced." A flash of irritation crossed Collins's face. "Sir, I'm simply trying to maintain the atmosphere our clientele expects. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our bar area? Or I can recommend several casual establishments nearby." Marcus's shoulders squared almost imperceptibly, a soldier's instinct to stand at attention when challenged. Instead, he leaned back slightly. "My reservation was confirmed yesterday. I'm meeting someone to discuss business. I'm appropriately dressed, and my credit card was pre-authorized for any charges." Collins's smile hardened. "Nevertheless, I'll keep my table, thank you," Marcus stated firmly. Collins's nostrils flared. "Sir, as manager, I have discretion over seating arrangements. I'm trying to accommodate you, but if you're going to be difficult—" "I'm not being difficult," Marcus interrupted, his calm unbroken, but his voice taking on a subtle edge that made Collins hesitate. "I'm simply expecting the service promised when my reservation was accepted." Several nearby diners had stopped their conversations, attention drawn to the escalating tension. Collins stepped closer, lowering his voice but not enough to prevent others from hearing. "Look, you clearly don't understand how things work here. This isn't some chain restaurant or fast food place." Marcus remained seated, his posture still controlled. "I understand perfectly. You've decided I don't belong here." "I didn't say that." Collins's voice sharpened. But Elliot's caters to a certain clientele. People who understand propriety and fit our establishment's profile. An older couple at the next table exchanged uncomfortable glances. A woman across the room frowned, her hand drifting toward her phone. "Say what you mean, Mr. Collins." Marcus's voice remained steady. "You took one look at me and decided I couldn't possibly belong here." Collins's face flushed. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance now. If you continue, I'll have to ask security to escort you out." The restaurant had grown quieter, the elegant background music suddenly more prominent as conversations paused. Marcus's expression never changed, but something shifted in his eyes, not anger, but a cold assessment, the kind that comes from evaluating genuine threats in life or death situations. "Go ahead," Marcus said quietly. "Call security. But understand that by doing so, you're making a choice that can't be undone." Collins retreated momentarily, speaking in hushed tones to a staff member who hurried away. Minutes passed in tense silence. Marcus remained at his table, outwardly calm though his index finger tapped a slow, deliberate rhythm on the tablecloth, a military technique for maintaining focus under pressure. Two broad-shouldered men in black suits appeared, positioning themselves behind Collins as he returned to Marcus's table. "Mr. Johnson," Collins announced loudly enough for several tables to hear. "These gentlemen will escort you out. You refuse to comply with our policies and are disrupting other guests' dining experience." A young woman at a nearby table had her phone raised, clearly recording the scene. Several other diners looked uncomfortable, a few openly disapproving. "What exactly have I disrupted?" Marcus asked, his voice controlled despite the public humiliation being orchestrated. "I've been sitting quietly, waiting for service that never came." Collins gestured dramatically. "You've been argumentative and confrontational. I've had complaints." "From whom?" Marcus challenged. Collins faltered momentarily. "That's confidential." One of the security guards, older and more experienced, seemed to sense something in Marcus's demeanor that gave him pause. He leaned toward Collins. "Sir, perhaps we should." "Do your job," Collins hissed. Turning back to Marcus, he continued, "Sir, please leave quietly or these gentlemen will assist you." Marcus studied the security guards, then Collins, with deliberate movements. He reached for his phone, never breaking eye contact. "I need to make a call first." "You can call from outside," Collins insisted. Marcus stood slowly, at his full height. His physical presence was commanding, though he made no threatening moves. "Mr. Collins, I strongly advise you to reconsider. This situation can be resolved without escalation." The phrase, standard military de-escalation language, caused the older security guard to narrow his eyes, reassessing Marcus. Collins mistook Marcus's calm for surrender. "The time for discussion has passed. Please leave now." Marcus held Collins's gaze for a measured moment before pressing a speed dial on his phone. When the call connected, his tone shifted subtly, taking on a clip precision that military personnel would instantly recognize. "James. Situation at Elliot's. Plans have changed." A pause. "No, not necessary." "Stand down." Another pause. 1900 affirmative. He ended the call and pocketed his phone. The older security guard's expression had changed, a flash of recognition crossing his features. "You were in service?" the guard asked quietly. Collins interrupted impatiently. "This isn't a social call. Mr. Johnson was just leaving." Marcus addressed the guard directly. 82nd, you? "Marines. 2 tours in Afghanistan." A look of understanding passed between them. The guard straightened almost imperceptibly. Collins's face reddened. "This is absurd. Being a veteran doesn't exempt you from restaurant policies." "No, it doesn't," Marcus agreed calmly. "But it does teach you to recognize situations that are about to go sideways unnecessarily." He turned to Collins. "I have guests joining me shortly. Military personnel. Would you prefer to explain to them why their host was removed, or would you rather seat us properly?" Collins scoffed. "Military personnel? Here." The skepticism in his voice was unmistakable. "Let me guess, your unit is coming?" Marcus's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered briefly in his eyes. "Not my unit, Mr. Collins. My command." The former Marine security guard shifted uncomfortably, sensing what Collins couldn't. "Right," Collins drawled sarcastically. "I'm sure the commanding officer will be very disappointed. Now, please leave before this becomes more embarrassing for you." "I'll leave," Marcus stated, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "But understand this isn't over." Collins smirked. "Is that a threat, Mr. Johnson?" "No," Marcus replied evenly. "Just a fact." As Marcus moved toward the exit, his gait fluid and controlled, the Marine security guard stepped aside respectfully. Several diners watched uncomfortably, a few openly disapproving of his treatment. Outside, Marcus stood beneath the restaurant's ornate entrance. The early evening air was cool on his face as he made another call. "James, change of plans." Meeting moved to the Jefferson. 2,000 hours. He paused, listening. "No, just a misunderstanding. Nothing I haven't dealt with before." He ended the call, his expression betraying nothing as the restaurant's valet avoided his eyes. Marcus declined the offer to retrieve his car, instead walking away with the measured pace of a man used to conserving energy for when it matters. Inside, Collins watched through the window, an uneasy feeling settling over him despite his victory. Something about the man's composure, his controlled response in the face of humiliation, left Collins with the distinct impression he'd miscalculated. "Sir," the Marine security guard approached hesitantly. "That man, did he say his name was Johnson?" Marcus's apartment reflected the disciplined simplicity of a life shaped by military service. The furnishings were functional but tasteful, with clean lines and minimal ornamentation. What distinguished the space were the details. Perfectly aligned bookshelves filled with military history and leadership texts, a precisely folded American flag in a triangular display case, and a wall featuring framed photographs and shadow boxes containing medals. Most prominent was a photograph of Marcus in full dress uniform, the distinctive green beret of Special Forces on his head. Silver eagles on his shoulders, signifying his rank as colonel. Beside him stood several high-ranking officers, including a 4-star general. Additional photos showed Marcus in combat zones, leading teams whose terrain most Americans would never see. Marcus stood before his closet, where his uniforms hung in perfect order, considering the pressed dress uniform with rows of ribbons and decorations earned over decades of service. His phone rang. "James." "Colonel." James began without preamble. "I briefed the general on the situation." Marcus sighed. "That wasn't necessary, James." "With respect, sir, it was—" "The Pentagon delegation is expecting proper protocol tomorrow, and the general wants to ensure there are no further incidents." Marcus moved to his window, overlooking the city lights. The restaurant was just one man's poor judgment. "It doesn't require military intervention." "The general disagrees, sir, especially given that tomorrow's meeting involves Congressional Oversight Committee members reviewing Special Forces appropriations." A brief silence followed. "I spent 23 years in war zones," Marcus said quietly. "I've been shot at, bombed, and ambushed. Being asked to leave a restaurant because of how I look isn't the worst discrimination I've faced. That's precisely why the general is concerned, sir. Your ability to maintain composure under all conditions is exactly why you're commanding this unit, and why this incident shouldn't be ignored." Marcus's reflection in the window stared back at him. The face of a man who had led elite soldiers through impossible situations, now navigating a different kind of battlefield. The following morning, Elliot's staff bustled with unusual energy. Collins moved between tables, barking orders and adjusting already perfect place settings. "The reservation is for 12 people," he instructed the server. "Department of Defense officials with congressional representatives. Every detail must be flawless." The maitre d' approached nervously. "Mr. Collins," the Pentagon called again to confirm. They were very specific about the table arrangement and mentioned their host will arrive first to ensure everything is prepared. Collins straightened his tie. "This could mean an exclusive contract for all their Washington functions. I want our best servers, finest wines available, and constant attention to detail." Outside, black SUVs with government plates began arriving. Men and women in formal business attire and military dress uniforms emerged, creating a stir among pedestrians. The restaurant's valet service scrambled to accommodate them. Inside, Collins personally inspected the private dining room one last time. Crystal glasses gleamed under chandeliers. Fine china was perfectly aligned with polished silver. The wine selection he'd personally curated waited in temperature-controlled cabinets. "Perfect," he murmured, satisfaction evident in his expression. The maitre d' appeared at the doorway, his face oddly tense. "Sir, the military liaison has arrived to inspect the arrangements." Collins smiled broadly. "Excellent. Everything is ready. He's asking specifically for you, sir. By name." Collins straightened his jacket, mentally rehearsing his welcome speech for the distinguished guests. "Well then, we shouldn't keep the military waiting, should we?" He strode confidently into the main dining room, prepared to display the charm that had built Elliot's reputation, then stopped cold.